Unit 9, Lesson 4, Peacemaking Principles. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conflict Resolution and Peacemaking, the class that teaches you how to manage interpersonal conflict and drama for yourself and others. I'm your instructor, David Lowry. In our last lesson, we overviewed types of nonviolent direct action. Today, we will wrap up that discussion and present peacemaking principles related to one's participation in direct action campaigns. We've mentioned that successful direct action campaigns result from careful planning. Dr. Martin Luther King, whom we've mentioned numerous times in this series of lessons, spent so much time listening to members of the communities he worked with so he might better represent their needs and advocate for them. Once he knew those needs, he would meet privately with people he believed could help make the changes he sought. He would first seek to negotiate his concerns and apply moral pressure before leading a highly visible and targeted public campaign. Even when he led his public campaigns, they were not designed to destroy his enemies, but to eliminate oppressive policies. King's legendary public campaigns were built on concrete goals, objectives, strategies, and tactics. A goal is something you'd like to accomplish. It's the big picture idea that some might describe as a vision. For example, we want the ABC Corporation to start an on-site daycare center for employees' preschool children. Objectives are the measurable outcome that determine whether the goals have been met. For example, by December, ABC Corporation will have set aside a specially designed space to be used as a daycare center for employees by preschool children. By January, ABC Corporation will have hired a daycare director, and by February, ABC Corporation will have a fully functioning daycare center for employees with preschool children. A strategy describes general approaches or methods used to accomplish an objective. For instance, all parents of preschool children will be contacted to petition ABC Corporation to formulate plans for a daycare center for employees' preschool children. Finally, tactics describe the actual means that will be used to achieve the goal. Examples might include parent meetings with management, letter writing campaigns, drafting proposals, presenting costs, and so on. Researchers like Wang and Piazza, who study political tactics, often organize them into categories to better help them understand their effect on political and social outcomes. For instance, one might classify nonviolent tactics as either disruptive or nondisruptive. Disruptive tactics, such as blockades and sit-ins, are more effective in helping protesters achieve movement goals rather than disruptive ones, because they disrupt the flow of activities around a target and usually gain media attention. At the same time, disruptive events such as traffic blockades can backfire because of the inconvenience caused to onlookers and people who are not sympathetic to their cause. Research by Jenkins and Eckhart suggests that once a certain amount of support and awareness has been gathered for a cause, further disruptive actions tend to create a backlash among supporters. The researchers mentioned that once civil rights laws were passed, society lent less support for demonstrations and disruptions, believing the movement should shift from protest to politics. Examples of tactics. Gene Sharp's The Politics of Nonviolent Action, mentioned in our last lesson, lists 198 tactics that people and organizations may use. The website for nonviolence information contains 300 tactics as well. Many of these tactics can be bundled under common categories, but we'll provide a few of them for you. Civil disobedience. This is disobeying illegitimate laws and refusing to cooperate, such as refusing to appear in courts or deportation hearings, or overloading administrative systems, seeking imprisonment, and nominating absurd political candidates. Economic campaigns. These would include boycotts or buying from alternative sources, selective patronage, refusing to rent or sell property, alternative transportation systems, alternative banking and economic systems, and business whistleblowing. Guerrilla art. Plays, concerts, performances, flash mobs, live crowd, choreography, using smartphone apps, paint as protest, mock award ceremonies, making protest symbols, and desecrating national and political symbols are all examples of guerrilla art forms. Information campaigns, handing out leaflets, participating in podcasts, talk shows, letters to the editor, letter writing, banners, posters, and the like. Marches. These include parades and protest marches, motorcades, processions, and pilgrimages. There's physical interventions such as sit-ins, blockades with cars, chaining oneself to an entrance, nonviolent occupation of buildings and offices, and nonviolent interjection of speeches, meetings, and press conferences. Strikes, sick-ins, slow-down strikes, selective strikes. Withdrawing from social systems, such as walking out of meetings and gatherings, turning one's back in silence, refusing to attend meetings, boycotting social affairs, and staying away from planned activities. Careful consideration should be given when selecting a particular tactic. There are strengths and weaknesses to each of them. Rufus Burroughs recommends the following when considering which tactics to use. Consider the cost because some tactics are expensive to carry out, and this makes using them difficult over the long term. Consider the requirements. Some tactics require more extended periods of time to be effective overall. Other tactics might require the mobilization of large numbers of people, which could prove to be a difficult task. In contrast, other tactics might be effectively used with only a few individuals. Dispersion and concentration. Some tactics, such as work shortages, work best when scattered throughout the geographic region. In contrast, other tactics require large numbers of people to be gathered in one place. And seizing the initiative. Burroughs defines this as mastery of time and place, knowing what to do and when to do it. These are many of the goals and tactics and objectives that are used by peacemakers. But now let's look at some peacemaking principles. The following principles are offered for your consideration based on the information presented in this lesson and the author's peacemaking experience. Peacemakers should be involved. As wonderful as our country may be, many things are yet to be done to reach its stated ideals of freedom and justice for all. Even today, there are marginalized groups needing protection and any number of laws that unfairly favor some groups over others. Social and political change cannot happen independently. It requires people willing to stand up and be counted. There is a style of active nonviolence for everyone. Though we all may have our pet causes, peacemakers should not consider one social concern as more important than another, or one's participation in some form of nonviolent direct action as better than another. There is a place in social improvement movements for everyone. Not everyone needs to participate in public protest, sit in a redwood tree, or chain yourself to a gate of a military installation. Social justice requires just as many people to create laws, educate others, use their influence for good, work for social change organizations, and organize nonviolent direct action campaigns as those willing to march or attend public protest rallies. What is essential, however, is that peacemakers find something meaningful to them, then invest themselves towards achieving the needed social changes. Gandhi made satyagraha his personal and spiritual path. Martin Luther King combined agape love and Brightman's moral laws as part of his 6 principles and personal philosophy. Whether one adopts nonviolence for pragmatic or personal reasons, there are always things one can do to integrate nonviolence as a way of living. For instance, students in one college I know about were instrumental in getting their campus to stop using harmful disposable cups. For some people, that may seem like a small thing. However, when one considers that several thousand people have stopped using an average of 3 cups daily, it takes on more significant meaning. There are other things one can do, such as considering where they spend their money, choosing instead to support causes and businesses that do good for their communities. Speak up and speak out. While no one peacemaker can solve the world's problems, we all can use our influence for good in that portion of the world where we live. As we hear about injustices where we live, we should be willing to speak up, attend meetings, advocate, and do our best to try and make things better. We may not always be able to change large corporate structures, but we can certainly work at making positive changes in our workplaces, churches, and families. When we hear people say insensitive things about others, especially marginalized groups, we can use our peacemaking skills to help reframe the conversation and, if need be, advocate for those voices that are disparaged or not often heard. But most of all, we can use the peacemaking principles and techniques presented in these lessons to help rid people of interpersonal and group conflict. Active nonviolence can work in daily living. Though we have discussed active nonviolence from a political and social point of view, peacemakers will find that many of these same techniques work just as well in minor circumstances, such as personal and organizational context. Direct action techniques such as non-cooperation and non-compliance can be used to change churches, social groups, and small corporate cultures. People and organizations can adopt activist practices and use their influence for good, write emails to change makers, help write policies, and organize support for cultural change in the same way that more significant cultural change movements do. All it takes is a willingness to become actively nonviolent. Active nonviolence is respectful. Peacemaking is not about winners and losers or replacing one set of societal values with another. Even when a campaign of active nonviolence successfully creates a new set of social and political principles, it cannot include the needs of all concerned. It is only a replacement of one power group with another. Peacemaking, using active nonviolence, is respectful of all points of view and seeks to create a community where all ideas can be expressed and heard. Peacemakers must be especially courteous to those of the present status quo. Pragmatically speaking, they often have the means of suppressing other points of view with violence or force. But from another standpoint, it's hard to win people over when they feel defensive, judged, or criticized. Respect and loving action go a long way in helping to win people to a new way of thinking. Cherish the ideal of a beloved community. Today, Martin Luther King's beloved community and UNESCO's culture of peace and nonviolence are more ideals than a cultural reality. Yet, as so many teachers of peace and nonviolence stress, everything begins as an idea. We should never underestimate the ability of hard work and determination to change the culture in which we live. For example, an organization called Built for Zero helped my former hometown of Abilene, Texas, become the first community in the state and the 11th in the country to end veteran homelessness. Now it's working to end chronic homelessness. In many ways, issues like homelessness, hunger, education, and human rights are just as much a problem of the human will as it is a lack of resources. Perhaps by practicing King's application of agape love, coupled with moral laws each day, we can hasten the day when the beloved community becomes a reality. Peacemaking is an active process making the world better, beginning with ourselves. While our primary goal as peacemakers is to help ourselves and others eliminate interpersonal conflict and drama, sometimes we are needed in a broader social context. In this series of lessons, we have discussed the importance of nonviolence as a peacemaking tool in its myriad forms. We have learned that nonviolence is more powerful than violent methods in bringing about meaningful social change. We've also taken a cursory look at numerous approaches to nonviolent direct action and discussed the importance of planning, goals, objectives, and tactics that activists use to bring about social and political change. Thank you for joining us today. We encourage you to download a copy of the transcript of this program and use it to answer questions about the lesson.